Hi everyone, it's Wednesday, the 28th day today with St. Joseph. We're going to talk about this legendary story of Joseph and the flowering staff. As we take a look at Joseph and take a look at sources that aren't necessarily historical sources, we say to ourselves, okay, so what do we hold on to here? The main thing is that Joseph weds Mary. The Bible, that is the four Gospels or the epistles of Peter and Paul or John, they don't provide us details with how this wedding took place. We know some things about Jewish weddings. We know about, that they married young, that they had this big week-long celebration, and we even hear in the Gospels and parables about the young maidens being called on the first, second, or third watch, and we know that the parents gave away usually their children to one another, family to family, and it was usually Jewish to Jewish, and you had to even check the tribes of the people, the family lineage. There's a lot of things. But in the legendary story, which comes from the Proto-Evangelium of James and the Pseudo-Gospel of Matthew, not the true one, they both agree on this story of a staff or a stick that Joseph is holding, and it blooms as a sign that he is the one to wed Mary. So evidently, this flowering stick is the sign to Mary, to her family, to Joseph, that he is the favored one. So it just seems like a colorful story, something that, is an incident that may not have ever happened. And somehow, though, the story is given twice in historical writings, and then later on in the medieval times, when they begin to do a lot of artwork involving Joseph, they begin to take on to that story, and they seem to always show him with a flowering staff. Easter lilies and other kinds of flowers come a bloom from his stick. Even sculptors as well make Joseph statues like this. And so what you have is that art and history kind of tell a story of something that could be true, something that may not true at all, something that might be true but stretched. We don't know. It goes to the modern era too, where I know when they were looking at the saints' calendar, they were looking back at some saints who have legendary stories mingled in with historical ones, and there's also some fogginess about, did this happen or did that happen, or did this happen to that saint or that saint, and because things aren't as clear or clarified historically, you're just left with a pious belief, and pious meaning a not so much a whimsical thing, but a thing that we could believe in if it helps, as long as it's not too dreamy. And with Valentine, that saint, he loses out to Cyril Methodius in modern times. Those two more historical missionaries get now the calendar date, and Joseph isn't there anymore. Valentine isn't there anymore on the calendar. Some other saints like Nicholas of Myra too have a number of stories told about him and what's true and what isn't. Well, with Joseph, it says here that in this account, Mary had made a vow of virginity of God. The high priest, though, is trying to figure out what to do with Mary, both because of their love for Mary. They are just trying to do what is right. They present Mary in the temple for her future. She can't not have this job anymore as a temple servant girl. And so the whole story could be based in the context of Joachim and Anne looking for what's next from God. And they could have also been consulting with Joseph's parents. We know his father's name was Jacob. And in Bethlehem, and talked to their family about an arranged marriage. There could have been talk between the parents that I have a consecrated virgin, you have a consecrated virgin. How do you put them two together as brother and sister, pair them up, and they both then can continue living their life, but they're also called to watch over each other. How can we work that out? Well, I think a legendary story just skips all that and just says Joseph had a flowering branch. He weds Mary because God creates this little miraculous sign, and God takes care of the rest. When I hear of stories of Nicholas or Patrick or Valentine, those saints, some of the stories are right on, and some of the stories are like, well, it sounds like something stretched or something's a little, hard to figure. There's also stories of Jesus in his youth that are from sources that are not Bible sources. There are other kinds of documents. I think it has one where Jesus is healing a bird or healing some kind of a creature that has died and bringing it back to life. Well, you've not read that in the Gospels because it's not there. Okay, it's one of these other stories. I don't know if you ever heard of them, like the Gospel of Thomas. You ever heard of that before? Well, these stories, they're more like pious legends instead of being something right on the mark. And so sometimes these stories are good to inspire us, but the faithful don't have to ascribe to them. And sometimes people will tell a story of faith that will include something that isn't necessarily historical, but they'll put it in to help you just cut to the crux of the matter. And it is time for me to wrap up this particular episode. So I could just say that, like if I was telling the story of a priest that wanted to become a priest since he was in second grade, okay? But I know this priest and I can say, well, what was the day you definitely knew? And he'd say, it was never a day. It was just a series of many days put together. And after like 1,000 masses, as a little boy and in my kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, I just knew that I would become a priest. And he did become a priest. Well, if you were putting together a movie, you wouldn't be able to show 1,000 days of him slowly discerning. So you instead might have a scene where he's looking at a priest doing a mass and he's enthralled, and you can see him actually putting his hands out for the consecration like he wants to do it one day. Maybe that thing never actually happened that way, but in the film or in the story they may show it, just again to cut to the chase. Well, anyway, we're going to go through this kind of thing tomorrow, looking at St. Joseph again in the eyes of fables, legends, stories, and part true stories. Bye.